Hey everyone, how you doing? I've been out of commission for a few days. I'm a little behind with these, but I'm behind with everything, so it all kind of evens out in the end. Behind one thing, behind another thing, whatever. There was supposed to be an assignment due today, but I pushed it back till tomorrow. So we're going to talk about that first. You're supposed to find a meme somehow related to what's going on in the recent chapters of the book. We're going to talk about issues 4 and 5 in a moment after we talk about this. Find a meme, just like Google one of the things that talked about in 4, 5, or 6. And write the word meme, look at Google Images, find a meme that has to do with something going on in issue 4, 5, or 6, and then write a page and a half or so in APA analyzing that meme. My video in a couple days, I'll talk more about memes and we'll look at some memes together. But for now, find a meme via Google. Also, we're going to be making memes as an appendix for papers 2 and 3. It'll be something relating to your paper topic. So you're going to have to find an image and then write something on it. And if you're struggling with how to do that, the writing part, or you can always work with your group with that. It should be pretty easy, and we'll make a, what's it called, a thread in the discussion board for these as well. Excuse me. As far as issues 4 and 5 are concerned, here I'm going to share my screen. We're going to take a quick look through the PowerPoint I've got going on. Let's see here. Issue 4, argument beyond pro and con. This is up on Canvas. You can take a look through it, and there's a link to a fun little video from the British comedy group Monty Python, all about arguments. Really what they mean though when they say beyond pro and con is that when we're thinking about our argument for paper 3, we're not just saying police brutality is bad, or trying to stop climate change is good, or Russia is doing bad things in Ukraine. We know that, right? We know those things. It's not just yes or no, good or bad. It's how and why. Yes, we can agree that in my sample paper, putting more green roofs on campus is good. That's fine. It's better for the environment. But the question is, how do we do it? Not just that we should do it, but how are we going to fund it? Which buildings are the most appropriate? What's our timetable, right? Because everybody can say it's a good idea. It's really how are we going to do it? How are we going to curtail police brutality? How are we going to ensure women are being hired and paid at an equal rate to their male counterparts, right? Beyond pro and con, into these more complicated ideas. Thinking of an argument like a conversation. So we can go back and forth. If we think back to the beginning of the semester, we talked about commercials. It's not just buy my burger or don't buy my burger, but why should we buy the burger? What really is there? How can we make things more complicated? We can talk about flavor, we can talk about price, and we can think that there's more going on than just yes or no. Dialogues of Plato. When we think back to Plato, and really when we think back to Socrates, because Plato was just basically transcribing what Socrates was supposedly saying to his students. The Socrates dialogues, the dialogues of Plato, were basically Socrates talking to a student. And Socrates would say something like, what is beauty? And the student would say, oh, beauty is when you see something that's pleasing to the eye. And Socrates would say, but can something smell beautiful? And then the student would say, oh, well, let me revise it. Something beautiful, pleasing to the eye or to the nose. And then Socrates would go, oh, but can something sound beautiful? And we'll go back and forth. And Socrates would keep prodding the student, never saying what he thought beauty meant, but prodding the student to come to a more complicated understanding, beauty, quality, truth, justice, and those main concepts. Doesn't matter which idea he was talking about, he would get his students to these ideas by these dialogues. Douglas, Frederick Douglass, our book talks about, does sort of the same thing, or he says he reads a book, and that was what really got him into the abolitionist movement. He reads what would be called a Platonic dialogue between a slave and a slaveholder, where the slave does all those same things and finally convinces the slaveholder that slavery is wrong. Unfortunately, the world doesn't really work like that. We, even though we can say slavery is wrong, the slaveholder is still a slaveholder. Can just be like, you know what? I can't argue with you, but I'm right and you're wrong, or I don't care about right and wrong. I'm the master. So unfortunately, we can't always use logic and a nice dialogue to get what we want. But if we're arguing in good faith, if both sides are really seeking the best outcome, the most just outcome, the most economically feasible outcome, then we can use these kinds of dialogues. If we can be as logical as we want on Fox News or MSNBC, but when somebody else is just shouting at us, it doesn't really make a difference. But in an academic argument, that's where this kind of back and forth really works. Zooming in on claims and evidence, the book talks about. This isn't just the yes or no, but the what, the how, the who, and the why, right? And these are the things to think about with your interviews too. Everybody's talked about who they want to interview, and I want to have a little side note to interviews momentarily. When you're thinking about who to interview, I've had some emails from people talking about particularly issues with the conspiracy theory topics. Remember, we're thinking about not whether or not people walked on the moon, or the world is flat, or Bush did 9/11. We're talking about why people are so prone to believe this kind of stuff. So people to talk to would be psychologists, sociologists, political scientists, historians, or maybe something about a COVID conspiracy. You could even just look on NPR's website, or PBS or BBC. I would steer clear of Fox and NBC or MSNBC. But if you go to a trustworthy news source and you find an article about it, quite often the writers of those articles will have their email or their Twitter handle, and you can get in touch with them. Maybe you could interview somebody like that too. That's not out of the question. I've talked to lots of people via email and via Twitter just by finding their names on an article and saying, oh, that's interesting. I want to talk to this person more about it. And they get back to you quite often. Not always, but often. So that's another option as well. When we're thinking about the interview, we're thinking about coming up with 5 or 7 questions ahead of time, making sure they're the what, the how, the who, and the why kind of questions, open-ended. Don't ask yes/no questions. Should EMU have more green roofs? Yes. That doesn't help us. Why should EMU have more green roofs? How can EMU have more green roofs? Those questions will give your interview subject some ability to kind of ramble on. 5 or 7 good questions like that, and maybe think about what they could say. You don't know exactly what they're going to say, but when you ask somebody, you're talking to a lawyer, how do we stop police brutality? Lawyer says, training, stiffer punishments. Those are the things, I suppose. What else could they really say? So then we know if those are the things they could say, and then we can think ahead of time, we're going to ask what kind of training or what kind of punishments seem appropriate, because we know that's what they're probably going to say. So we can think of follow-up questions before the interview, so we're more prepared. And that gets us to the second thought. Make sure we're prepared. If you're meeting them in person, if they're going to see you, don't wear your pajamas. If you're talking to them, don't be stuffing food in your mouth the whole time. That's kind of obvious, and I know most of you don't need to hear that, but just in case, be gracious. Thank them for taking the time out of their day to talk to you. Send them an email after the fact, even if it's not the most helpful interview. Oh, thank you. I just wanted to touch base again. Thank you again for taking the time to talk to me. It was really helpful and I really appreciate it. Just something quick like that. Let them know you're thinking about them and that you really do appreciate it. The other thing is make sure you're starting to set up these interviews sooner rather than later. Try a few people, see who gets back to you first. Don't ask one person and wait a month and say, oh, that person never got back to me, I'm still waiting. If you send an email today and they don't get back to you in a week, that email is so far down their email list that they're probably never going to see it. Send another one and try somebody else. Don't just send one and wait. The next part here, the book talks about different things we're getting to in argument. The conclusions, the extrapolations, the examples, the analysis, the evidence, and the base claims. How we're bringing all of these things together. And extrapolation means we have these facts. What do we do with them? What do they mean? Why are they important? What do they imply about our topic? What do they imply about society? What do they imply about us? And look at those cute bear cubs just wondering about these things as well. Focus on effective organization. Just like the Scooby-Doo sandwich, we're starting with the claim, moving into the back context, evidence, analysis, the implications, or that's where we're extrapolating, and then our concluding claim, right? Making sure that our paragraphs are doing this, so we're moving from one idea to the next throughout the paragraph and getting that precise argument within each paragraph, just like that Scooby-Doo sandwich. Composing together, the next chapter, issue 5, talks about working in groups and collaborating, and to a certain extent, collaborating with social media and things like that. That's where you were supposed to talk in a homework about how social media has been helpful for you, where you've learned things from talking to people online or reading things online. I'm getting a lot of my info about what's going on in Ukraine right now via social media, and I imagine a lot of you are too. I don't know if you're following it as obsessively as I am, but it's freaking me out, man. I'm not thrilled about this situation. I'm worried that we're on the brink of something really bad. And social media is helping the people over there tell us what's going on, and it's helping people like me follow along and look into what's really happening. Of course, I'm, reading the articles and listening to the news on the radio. But it's social media. CSW, we're not doing. Next week, we also, or at the end of this week, we need to do some library stuff too, probably next week. And so you're going to be working with your groups for that. Collaborating with audience, that's where we're getting into things like social media, or where you can use social media to as the audience to collaborate with the writers of other things. All right, where we work together with the text, the author, and the audience, as this triangle suggests from the book. And that's about it with this particular part, issues 4 and 5. Talked about next time. We've got homework due for Wednesday, finding a meme that relates to what's going on in the book and analyzing it. We also need to, lost you for a second. Think about what's coming up after that. We talked about interviews, we talked about the book, we talked about writing assignment 9. Library, let's think about finding some more sources by the end of this week, or over the weekend perhaps. For paper 1, you found 3 sources and used one of them. Now you can use all 3 of them. Find a few more sources in the library, plus you get your interview, plus a Melcat loan. However, I have had a couple emails from people out of state saying, I'm in Ohio, I can't use Mel. There is an Ohio system that's very similar. However, Ohio does not combine the public libraries with the academic libraries. So there's two separate things. And I've sent out emails to people in Ohio who have asked me about this. If you're not on campus and you can't use Hallie, you could use a public library in your own hometown. And this is an email I got yesterday too. Somebody struggling to log in. Remember that if you're using a hometown public library, you have to be logging in with your hometown public library account, member information, your patron information from your library card. You can't use EMU stuff to log into Livonia Public Library. You got to use Livonia Public Library card name and card number. So if you want to use a different library and you don't have a card, you're going to have to go get a card too. You might be able to do it online or over the phone. Some libraries allow it and others don't. We've got writing assignment 10 coming up next week. This is issues 7 and 8. That's the end of the book. Drawing conclusions 320 on page, or at the end, on page 320, at the end of the issues, due on March 22nd. We've got paper 2 coming up. Take another look at the sample paper. In fact, let's take a look at that real quick together. We talked about APA before the break. I suppose we should talk about it again. Remove paper 2. There we go. So we've got the title, your name, department, school, and the department where the papers due. Somebody asked me that too. What do I put for department? English, language, and literature. The papers for this class are the English department. Date. Remember, you got your page number. You don't have your last name though. Again, you have the full title. And then your intro. Level headings, paper 2. I'm using websites, databases as a subset of websites, and then books. We've got my reference page down here, a little different from AP MLA. Last name, first initial, year in parentheses, title, publication info. Remember, article titles, only the first word is capitalized and there's no quotation marks. Book titles, only the first word is capitalized, but they're italicized. Take a look at that. You can take a look at the OWL site again and have a fun couple days. And I'm going to make another one of these soon because I've been behind with them. Most of you have your paper 1 back, but still there are a few that don't. I have more doctor stuff tomorrow, all day, but I think by tomorrow night I should be caught up with paper 1. If not, I'm sorry, I'm trying. It's just things have been blowing up, but we'll get it. Have a good couple days. Keep wearing your masks. Stay safe. Have fun. Do some more research. Keep sending me emails when you're struggling, or keep me on my toes because I was slipping last week or so. See you around like a record, namely in a video probably on Thursday.